Three, two, one. Welcome back, everybody, to Conversations with Christopher Hanau. Today we have a very special guest, Liam Conroy. So, off camera, we've been talking a little bit about a recent trip to Europe you've had, and just want to go straight into that. How was the whole experience, and how was that?
That was phenomenal, man. I don't want to be cliche, but life-changing for sure.
Okay.
In regards to like my life and perspectives on what I want to do and who I want to be, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was definitely nervous before going for sure, just because it's a little nerve-wracking not knowing anybody in any of these countries and never solo traveled before. So it was definitely an experience and a lot of learning for sure.
So, do you think it was a very different experience going solo compared to like a big group?
Definitely.
Why? In what aspects?
Well, I mean, when you go with a group, like let's say you're going on a guy's trip to wherever, you'll have kind of stuff planned out and everybody wants to do a few things, but nobody can really do everything they want because you're going to have differences in opinion on certain things, right?
Yeah.
But solo, you can pretty much do whatever you want and plan out your day however you want, and you can be a little more free in your planning. It's like, let's say you meet somebody cool in Spain and you want to keep traveling with them. You could cancel your next plans and kind of just go on with them for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then come back to your plans or however you want to do it. But with a group of friends, you can't really do that because you're with your friends and you got to stick with them for the trip. But yeah.
So I know you've mentioned that it's been a big life changing experience, right? In what aspect or what do you think about it was so different that like changed perspective for you?
I'd never obviously I've lived alone before and went to college and lived alone then, but you don't really get the freedom that gives you until after you move out of your parents or whatever it may be. And that kind of just shifted my opinion on what I wanted to do and for work and things like that and how I wanted to live, and just got to the point where I wanted to enjoy myself more and not focus so hard on work or take myself too seriously, you know?
Yeah. So if you had advice for somebody that was trying to do a similar thing, like a trip around Europe for a couple months or whatever, what would the biggest advice you have be?
Don't second guess yourself. Just go out and do it. If you really want to do it, you won't regret it.
Yeah.
But leading up to it, you're going to get super nervous and you're going to be like, why am I doing this? Nobody's coming with me. But you'll love it so much better just because on the people you meet, man.
Yeah. So where did you start?
I started in Madrid, Spain. And I did about 3.5 weeks in Spain and then went on to the Greek islands.
Okay.
But basically did all of the Mediterranean and then some of the Balkans, Hungary, Romania. I did Vienna, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, Lisbon, and then finished off with Ireland, Scotland, and London.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite spot?
I mean, overall, I gotta say Barcelona.
Okay.
Just because it has everything. Has the beach, has good food, has great tourist attractions, certain churches, hikes, that kind of deal. Great nightlife, and it's very it's like New York or DC or London. There's people from everywhere. You know, it's one of the few cities in Spain that I thought people from every country live in Barcelona.
Yeah.
You know, because then you go to places I also went to Malaga. There's mostly people that are from Spain and specifically from that area that live in Malaga.
Yeah.
You know, a little more worldly, but.
Was there any spots that you didn't like?
I wouldn't say there's any spots I didn't like, but there's places that I had not great experiences with. So I kind of associated with, I probably wouldn't go back there.
Yeah.
And there's definitely places where you go once and you're there for 2 days and you're like, I've seen everything, you know?
Yeah.
I don't need to come back kind of deal.
Okay. So out of all these places, where do you think people, or where would you give a friend to start? Where would you tell them?
We'll definitely go during the summer, because
Okay.
summer is just way better, I think.
Yeah.
But I would either do like Madrid or Barcelona or Amsterdam. Um, Croatia's a great spot too. Less people go, but it's a great spot. It's gorgeous. And the Greek islands was my overall favorite, so definitely recommend like island hopping there. But I'd say Spain or the Netherlands is probably like the best two places to start to kind of get your feet wet a little bit. Just because a ton of Americans go to those places, one, and two, it's very like populated cities and more, I'd say similar to America, but there are some things that are more similar.
Yeah. Was there a language barrier at any of these spots?
For sure.
Which ones?
I'd say like the toughest one for me was probably Romania. Because they'll know, like, people will know like bits and pieces of English, but very few people could have like full on conversations with you. And also, surprisingly enough, not really in Barcelona, but Spain.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I had the advantage of, I used to be like pretty fluent in Spanish, but I've kind of lost it over the years after school and stuff. So I had the good thing of kind of knowing the language a little bit.
Yeah.
But still, like, when you come, some countries want you to speak in English because they want to practice their English and speak in English to you. But other countries are kind of like, I'd rather speak in Spanish or French or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, there definitely can be a language barrier, not necessarily on like small things like ordering food or like how are you doing, stuff like that, but like little slang words that we might use or like a Dutch person might use that we have no clue what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
That kind of deal.
So after this experience, did you have a thought of moving there, or are there any spots that you would live in?
I don't know. I'd say definitely London, definitely Amsterdam, Barcelona. I would think about living in Lisbon, but I didn't spend as much time there, so I didn't really get a good taste of the city. But pretty much only those, because most of the spots I went to are, I think, great for like a long weekend or a week or stuff like that. But like, I couldn't see myself living in Rome or even Copenhagen or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe Munich in Germany too. I love that city. But yeah.
So after having come back here to the DC area, what things were real different to you, or you think that would be better if it was like Europe?
Public transportation, definitely number one. We have like one train that goes from here to New York, and it's super expensive,
Yeah.
But you could hop on a 4-hour train in Europe for €10, and it'll get you there quick, and like the service is great, that kind of deal. Again, talking about public transportation, like buses and especially planes, like, there's a ton of competition for airline companies in Europe.
Yeah.
So I mean, the least amount I spent on a flight was like €30,
Wow.
which is unheard of in the States.
Correct.
And another weird thing, just culturally wise and personality wise, in America, like when I see you, let's say at the gym,
Yeah.
I'll say, "What's up, man? How you doing?" And you'll say, "Good," and then I'll say, "Good," and we'll kind of walk off and do our separate things.
Yeah.
But in Europe, there's no real "how you doing." It's either you say hi and have a conversation, or you just say hi and you roll. I think it's a little like hollow and fake. But then in American culture, it's completely normal and it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
Which was a little weird to me.
So you think the people over there were like more genuine, or?
I wouldn't say more genuine, but just a different conversation style, Like if you're going to talk to them, you're going to have a full-on conversation. You're not going to do the little, "How you doing? How's the wife? How's the kids?" That kind of stuff. Like we Americans do all the time.
Yeah.
And definitely from like country to country, it really switches on just how people conversate with each other. Like certain things you can talk about or will talk about, and certain things you won't. It really changes per country.
That's interesting. Yeah. So where were you staying at in most of these places?
Mostly hostels, which I personally love.
Okay.
And I think there's a bad conception of them in America just from like specific horror stories people tell.
Yeah.
But overall, it's the best way to travel and meet people for me. Met tons of people in hostels and have some really good friends from hostels. And I just think personally, even if you're going with a few friends, like rent out a room in a hostel for you and like 4 other people, then you can still meet people, you know? But if you do an Airbnb or a hotel, you're not really going to meet anybody unless you go out and like go to bars and like chat people up that are from there.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to, you know, I mean, you might be staying in a hostel and there's 3 people from Brazil and a couple Dutch people and a couple people from Spain or England or wherever it may be.
Yeah. Do they have hostels over here?
Very select cities. Like they have like 1 in DC, like
Okay.
2 or 3 in Miami. They have a lot in California, but from what I've heard, it's a no-go in California.
Yeah.
But the hostel system in Europe is like widely used over there by people. It's not really common here, and nobody really thinks, oh, I'm going to stay in a hostel, you know? But you'll definitely save a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So how did you plan out most of your days? Were you going in with a plan or?
So originally, like the months leading up to it, I typed out like every city and place I wanted to go to, and I put some maybes, you know. And I literally booked the entire first month.
Yeah.
Just because I was a little nervous about it, and I wanted to have like at least the first month kind of booked, ready to go. But, you know, I mean, you'll Google search like best things to do in Barcelona or best things to do in Madrid. And you'll take a few things from there. But really the best things, like touristy things and even like nightlife spots, are all from locals or people that travel a lot, or the people that work in the hostel. They'll tell you, oh, these are the best food spots. Like, don't go here. Like, all the tourists go here, you know, stuff like that.
So for somebody that's like trying to do a similar trip, would you say it's better to go with like
I would go with ideas in your head for sure.
ideas?
Yeah, just ideas of like jot a few things down. Like, let's say you're going to Croatia and you're going to Split and Dubrovnik. Like, oh, I want to go take a tour of the walled city, or if you're really into Game of Thrones, I want to do like a Game of Thrones tour, or like pick out a few like really popular clubs and bars that people might want to go. You know. But be open-minded at the same time, because you'll get there and somebody that travels a lot more than you will say, oh, no, don't go there. Like, you got to go to these spots.
Yeah.
But the experienced people usually know what they're talking about.
How was the whole food experience, I guess?
Oh, it was great. So it really depends on what kind of budget you have in regards to food, because I knew some people who cooked every meal or like ate like $5 sandwiches every meal. But then other people would literally like go out to nice dinners every night and do that kind of thing. I was a little bit in the middle, but I'd say the food there is great, because you're getting most of the stuff you're getting is local and fresh from most of the places. And they have their little, even if you spend like a month in Spain like I did, each city will have their little like twists and changes on dishes that are nationally recognized, you know?
Yeah.
And then other cities like Valencia will have the best Spanish food there out of all the cities in Spain.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to find local dinner spots or coffee shops that have great food for cheap.
Yeah.
And I feel like unlike America, like unless you're going fast food or like local mom and pops, like it's very hard to find a cheap spot to eat in like DC unless you know where you're going.
Yeah.
I think.
That's interesting. So overall, after having had this experience, how do you think it's changed you as a person?
Ooh, I'd say like not values per se, but like what I want out of my life has changed a little bit. So I feel like when I went off to college, it was all like, oh, get a degree, get a job in your field and like work up the ladder in that job and like try and make enough money to retire or start your own business, that kind of thing. But I've definitely put more emphasis in my life now on enjoying it and doing the things I want to do because you're only going to be, it's cliche, but you're only going to be in your 20s once.
Yeah.
And you want to enjoy all these things before you have kids or you get tied down and whatever it may be, you start a business and that's your focus. I just think now's the time to really enjoy yourself, because it's either you pick now or you pick later, which personally I'd rather have now.
I mean, I think even that's a pretty popular concept of like right after high school, people taking a year off, 2 years off, and literally just traveling, experiencing life a little bit, and then kind of deciding, like, after you've gotten some experiences that kind of shape you, now you can better decide like what direction you want to go in, what type of degree do you want, what type of job do you want, what type of life do you want. It's an interesting topic.
I completely agree, man. And I couldn't do it, unfortunately, because I had signed up to do study abroad in Italy for, I think it's like a semester, which is 3.5 months.
Yeah.
And COVID hit that like end of spring semester, and I was supposed to go in the fall, so couldn't end up doing it. But if you're in college, go study abroad, because it's a way easier way to travel. Because you'll be taking classes during the week, and you'll really get to like experience a city. Like I was gonna do Florence. And you'll experience that city, but then every weekend you'll be like, oh, let's do Amsterdam this weekend or wherever it may be. And I think that's a great way to dip your toes in it and really dip your toes into other cultures.
Yeah. How far away were things like that, or those cities and countries? Because I think we don't really understand how close and how much smaller they are.
Europe, like in comparison, it's harder to drive Europe than it is here, because they don't they have the Autobahn and stuff like that. But I mean, it's not like there's 95 all across Europe. It's mostly like train routes.
Yeah.
But like Barcelona is at basically the northwest corner of Spain, right?
Okay.
Pretty north.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to get there from Madrid, which is in the smack dab middle of the country, hour and a half, 2 hours, you know? But if you're going from like, I'd say if you can cross water, do it by plane. Like if you're going from Spain to Italy.
Yeah.
Much easier, way less hassle. But the train system is really, really good. So trains are very easy and definitely the cheapest option.
Yeah.
But then you go over to like the Balkans and Eastern Europe, and it's more you're taking buses or flights. Like the train system isn't as great there. But it's not like the buses are horrible. I mean, I think one of the buses I took was from Dubrovnik to Split, which like Dubrovnik is in the south of Croatia, while Split's a little more north. And that was about 3.5 hours. But it's like one of those big Greyhound buses with Wi-Fi and air conditioning, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know? But it's really like user choice almost, because you can fly everywhere for sure too. It's going to be more expensive, but also I didn't mind taking the trains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think there were things that like maybe Europe could do better, like more like the US?
I think so. Like to give you an example, in both Greece and Italy, like just like the bathroom situation, man, like it's just not great. I'm not going to go in like super detail about it, but like Greece has like the Greek islands have a super problem with plumbing.
Okay.
So you can't like, I forget what it was, but like the water was like discolored and looked a little like yellowish brown and was like, it just felt nasty. And like that sort of thing, like hygiene wise, like America does better in like restaurants and stuff. And like if you go out to eat, or especially going out to eat, it's a way different type of service you get, because the way we think about it in America, like let's say you take a date out to a nice dinner. They usually have like about an hour and a half, 2 hours kind of experience time, and then it's time to like get up and go, if not before. And they're not going to rush you out of there, but they're going to drop the check or do whatever. In places like Italy and Spain and Greece, like once you sit down, like it's your table for as long as you want it. But they're also not going to be like checking up on you as much. Like they're going to kind of leave you alone. And to Americans, one thing I noticed was all the Americans were like that I met said it takes forever to get the check in Europe. It's stuff like that, you know, which Europeans love it. But coming from America, I liked like someone always being on top of it and saying, "Oh, are you ready for the bill, or do you want another drink, or whatever it is?"
Feeling taken care of.
Yeah. I think that's just a difference in culture.
Yeah.
Between us.
Interesting. How was the whole situation in terms of safety? Like, did you feel safe? Like,
so I felt safe, but you also like can do certain things to
not be safe.
Yeah, and like there's just I don't know, like you got to be on your P's and Q's for sure. And if like I'm not gonna lie, like I went out a lot and like drank and went to bars and stuff, just because when you're in hostels, everybody wants to do things and go out and drink and meet people, so you're always doing that. But you can't, like, you're in a random country, you can't get like blacked out drunk or like over the line by any means. Like you got to be like about your wits and stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing I did was I never used to wear like fanny packs or like a little man bag or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's great when you're traveling because people will like pickpocket you all day if you keep your phone in your pockets. Yeah. Especially in big cities. Like it happens all the time. There's small stuff like that, and like locking up your stuff when you're in a hostel, which they'll have lock boxes under your bed or whatever. But just keeping safe, just like you would if you were in a different city in America, you know? I will say it's definitely a little less safe for women, but I knew a ton of women who solo traveled too. Yeah. But again, you have to be on your P's and Q's. You know, you can't just trust anybody and go out with anybody, you know? You got to vet them a little bit and talk to them and get a sense of who they are.
So I've heard that from everybody that's like traveled to Europe, or actually a lot of places, to be honest, but they'll be saying, "Oh, I went solo, but I met so many friends and people from this country, from over here, from over there." And how was that experience like? Is it really that easy to meet
That
people?
Was the best part of Europe.
Really?
Yeah, because like, let's say I'll take you through like a day I checked in at a hostel, right? Yeah. So in Barcelona, the first day I checked in, I just spent a week in Ibiza and I was just exhausted, man. Like kind of wanted to go to sleep, just eat something, like have a chill night. But you check in, they show you to your room, and immediately they'll be like, you know, you'll do an 8-person room per se, which is a pretty big room. Yeah. And there'll be like 2 or 3 people in there, and they'll all introduce themselves, and you'll talk, where are you from, all that stuff. What do you want to do while you're here? And then you'll link up with them. And each hostel usually has a bar there or a common area. And everybody at like 6 to 8 p.m., maybe a little later, will go to that area and just like sit down and talk to random people, you know? Yeah. So I think there's just a different dynamic with going by yourself and going in a group. It's like, let's say we all went in a group to wherever. You'd be more inclined just to chill with your friends and talk to them, you know? But when you're solo, it forces you to meet everybody and just go and talk and see who you like. Because a lot of Europeans, when I talked about like just differences between them and Americans, is one, they think we're loud. Really? A little loud and obnoxious. Like one of the sayings was, "We always know when it's an American."
And how? Just
you're being loud and just the way you talk.
Wow.
Which we don't think about it like that. Like we'll just be laughing at a bar having fun.
Yeah.
But that's just something they noticed. And 2 is that when Americans get together, they don't really branch out. Like they stay in their little group when they go out to a bar or go out on a tourist kind of thing and there's other people there. But I had never even thought about it like that, but it was mentioned to me multiple times.
Yeah. So how was nightlife and that whole aspect?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It's definitely better spots than others.
Okay.
And depending on what you like too, like in Barcelona, there's everything. Like if you like rap or you like reggaeton or you like EDM and house music and stuff, you can pick your club and go, and that'll be like the vibe there. Or if you're feeling more like low key, I just want to wear a t-shirt, you know, or if you're like, oh, I want to go and like ball and wear a nice shirt and do whatever, spend like $20 on cocktails, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
But there's a few places that are like the party spots. One of them's Barcelona for sure. Ibiza is the best for me. It's like party island, and just the vibe's great there. And then the Greek islands are all a little more laid back, but super fun. Just everybody partying all day long. Croatia's great. Amsterdam is amazing, especially if you like that like house and techno kind of club scene. Berlin, but you have to like techno and stuff like that, which a lot of people either have never listened to or like don't really like it. So it's a little weird going for the first time, but I'd say the overall, like, it's weird when you go to Berlin, either they take your phone and like put it in bag check, or they put a sticker over your camera, and you're not allowed to use it in any of the clubs because it ruins the atmosphere.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's actually really cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool. Like, we have one club in DC that does that, but just certain things like that just differentiates. But then if you like going to like dives and like pubs and like local live bands, that kind of deal, like Ireland's great.
Really?
Yeah. Or Denmark. I mean, Copenhagen's great. Places in Italy are great. You know, you'll go to a little wine bar and have great cocktails with friends at like 5 or 6 p.m. That kind of thing.
Yeah. That's actually really cool, the idea of like taking the phones or covering the cameras. 'Cause think about it. When you go out over here, like, how many people are on their phones
doing this?
Yeah. Or just like, when in reality it's like you literally went out, like, and you're not interacting with anybody. Like,
why'd you go out?
Exactly.
You know? You're there to talk to people and have fun or dance or do whatever you want to do.
Facts.
You know? But it's the one thing that, because I'm definitely not in that type of crowd, but Berlin's a little more grungy, a little more that kind of crowd, like leather, all that kind of stuff. Which I didn't have a problem with because I was there for a few days and I had a great time. But like Spain and Croatia were more my vibe, kind of like summery, fun, hype music, that kind of deal.
Between Spain and Croatia, what did you like more?
Overall, Spain is just gorgeous, but that's combining like food, nightlife, tourist attractions, the cities themselves, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
But Croatia is great for like, go for like a week or two vacation and just go to Croatia and hit all the little towns and cities up across the coast.
Yeah.
That's amazing, you know? But overall, Greek islands did it for me, hands down.
Why you say that?
There's just something about them, man. Like, it's just crazy. You know, you'll like, let's say you wake up and right when you walk out of your bungalow or you walk out of your hostel, it's just a Greek beach, clear water, beautiful boats, beautiful sunrise, all that stuff. And you'll go, and at the end of the day, the sunsets there are unbeatable. Like Santorini, Eos, Mykonos.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's just a different vibe. It's got that island vibe. It's like going to the Keys or going to San Diego or something like that in America. It's just very laid back and chill. Everybody's nice. Like, you're there to chill, have a good time, eat good food, drink, that kind of deal.
Yeah. Was there any spots that you went into with an expectation and then when you got there it was completely different, or just not what you were expecting?
I thought I'd like Athens a lot better than I did. The tourist stuff there is great. Like, go to the museums, go see the Parthenon and the monuments and all that stuff. But I just didn't like the vibe of the city almost. And I think it kind of had to do with some places in Europe don't have great opinions on Americans. And Athens is definitely one of those places. So you kind of have to, if you're talking to somebody that's not American or Greek in that instance, like, you don't have to really prove yourself, but you kind of have to prove you're not an ass a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they have that conception, some countries do, that Americans are just assholes.
Wow.
But
what other places you think had that?
Oh,
or that you maybe saw that?
I love a bunch of people from the UK, but definitely English people have like that Americans, you know,
Really?
that kind of, some of them, not all of them. And keep in
Yeah.
mind, like any of these examples, it's always like specific people. It's never like the whole culture as a
For
whole,
sure.
you know.
For sure.
But it also really depends, like, on if you're from a small town in that country or if you're from one of the big cities like Amsterdam. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But overall, most people were just nice and genuinely kind and just wanted to make friends, that kind of deal.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I see a lot of Americans, like, they'll be over here talking about how, like, we need to do a lot of things more like Europeans, right? And then I've also seen a lot of things from Europeans talking about how, like, it's not as great as Americans make it out to be. Like, they make it out to be like, this is a heaven, this is that, and so efficient. But in reality, like, there's a lot of things that maybe America does a little better.
Oh, for sure.
What like, if you were to lean in one direction, what do you what do you think is a more livable place for you?
I mean, personally, for me, America.
Okay.
But that's because I grew up here and I know it better. And culturally, like, that's, you know, you grew up with it.
Yeah.
That's what you. But I bet you I'd probably say different if I grew up in the Netherlands or if I grew up in Sweden or if I grew up in Barcelona or wherever. But I'd say overall, opportunity-wise, America is better for jobs and housing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of places in Europe, most people rent, and it's impossible to buy like your own property. And that's one thing about America that all Europeans will say or admit is you can definitely buy a house in America. Like, that's an achievable goal. But in London, like, even the rent is insane. You know, just like New York, but it's just much harder. Yeah.
So I know you, speaking off camera, you were talking about how you plan on being based out of the DC area for a little while. More, has that experience changed your opinions on where you want to stay within the U.S.?
Not my opinions on where, but my opinions on how long and when. Because I definitely want to come back to this area later and settle down and get married around here.
Yeah.
Or close to it, at least, East Coast. But I really want to go out to like Southern California or maybe like the North Coast or something like that and try it and just experience it for a few years and come back, you know?
Is that based off your experience in Europe? Or?
For sure. Because I would have definitely leaned East Coast beforehand and like, oh, I love DC already. Why would I leave? Because I love DC. It's a great city. But I also think, you know, San Diego might be great or San Francisco or Phoenix or wherever, you know. I just want to, because once you go on like a trip like that or you travel for like a month, like you got the travel bug and you just want to keep going and experiencing new places. Yeah. Because it's like, it's almost like childlike euphoria every time you go to a new place. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Yeah. You know? That's kind of along the lines of what changed for me.
I mean, there's a lot of people they'll talk about traveling and they'll say like, literally when you're in a new city, new place, like you're literally like, you're almost in a childlike state. Like, and the only time you're really like that is like when you're a little baby or toddler where everything is new to you. Like the setting, the experiences, like language, or possibly language, food. It's like, after you're grown, you don't really get that because you know what food to expect. You know what you expect from people. It's like you don't really get that until you're in a whole new place, new city. It's interesting how that could affect your perception.
Oh, for sure. Like, I'll give you a great example. Most of the people you meet in hostels are younger, for sure. But every so now and then you'll get somebody in like their 40s or 50s or even their 60s, like going with their wife and they just wanted to do whatever for whatever reason. But I had a conversation with this one guy who was from Florida. He was in his 50s and I was like, why are you still staying in hostels? Like, you have the money to go stay in nice hotels, like do all this, whatever, Airbnbs. And he plainly said, it just makes me feel young. Like
Wow.
traveling and meeting new people, like it keeps me young,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty spot on. Because, I mean, I went to college for 4 years, and obviously when I got to college, I was like, wow, this is amazing. But you get used to it. And then at the end, you either move out and move to a new city, or you go back to your parents for a little bit, or whatever you may be. But there's no really like new change where you're experiencing something all for the first time. And every time you travel to somewhere new, it's a totally new experience because you may have expectations, but I'm telling you, it's going to be different than what you expect, and you're going to like it a lot more.
Wow.
I think.
Yeah. So you mentioned something earlier. You're only in your 20s once.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is to like get the stuff out of our system young? Or
I personally, for me, it's very important. But I have friends that are already married and have children, and they're in their mid to late 20s, and their idea is, I've already found like my person. Like we want to have kids, so let's have kids early, and then when we're in our 50s or late 40s or whatever it may be, then we'll go and like splurge on these trips and go enjoy yourself. But personally, even if you have found that person or you're married still, you're only this like, I'd say like about like 30 to 35, like your body starts to deteriorate, one. And two, you're less likely to go out and like party and have fun. And that's not what traveling's about, don't get me wrong.
yeah.
But it's definitely a big piece of it for people our age.
Yeah.
And you want to go and enjoy like all these things and the nightlife and the food. Personally, I think while you're young, because that's steadily you're just going to go out less and less, and you're going to be hanging out with friends less and less because you have more things to do and more responsibility. So why not get it out of the way now while you're fresh out of high school or college?
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes complete sense to me because I used to be very focused on goals and like, I don't want to do anything until I'm here. I want this amount of money. I want to be in this position, right? But then I realized I'm like, what if I get there at like, let's say 35, 30, or even later in life? And it's like, am I going to have the energy or will or like partying now is not the same thing as in 10 years.
No.
You're not, we're going to be way more mature. We're not going to be, it's just not going to be for us. So it's not something that you could kind of come back to and do necessarily.
I completely agree, man. And another thing that I was having a conversation with another, I think she was like 35. She's from California, but she was staying in a hostel like a bunch of us young people. And she was like, you don't know, like maybe your interests now, like let's say you're really into just like going to the pubs with like your boys. You're really into like going to like raves or whatever it is, your niche, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might change in 5-10 years, man. And like if you didn't really go out and experience it and get as much out of it as you wanted, you might say, yeah, I don't like it now, but I wish I would have gone out that night, or I wish I would have, bucked up and said, oh, let's do it.
Yeah.
'Cause that's one thing you learn while solo traveling, and especially like backpacking through a certain amount of countries, is you might wake up exhausted from a tour the day before, like an all-day tour, or you might wake up really hungover or whatever it may be, but push yourself to go do whatever you're going to do that day, because the next day you're going to be like, oh, I wish I went to see that chapel. I wish I went on that hike, or I wish I went to that bar with my friends, or, I mean, what are you going to remember? The crappy feeling of being tired or hungover, or are you going to remember not going?
Yeah. That makes sense. From things you heard from other people traveling, what are some spots that in Europe that you think you missed or you'd like to go to?
Definitely. So one of the spots that got mentioned the most to me was Poland, and specifically Krakow. I had never even really thought about it, but I couldn't squeeze it in, unfortunately, because there was just, you get basically 90 days to do most of Europe, and then they kick you out. They don't literally kick you out, but if they catch you, like you might get banned or from the EU or whatever.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia, Montenegro, and then England and Scotland.
So you could stay there longer.
Yeah, like I did 4 months, and I spent a month in those places specifically, and then did 3 months in the rest of the continent.
Yeah.
But definitely Poland. I did go here, but Montenegro,
Yeah.
phenomenal. Like I honestly didn't have high expectations, but one of my favorites.
Really? Why? Because that's actually a spot I want to go to.
It's like a mix of the Greek islands and Croatia, and super cheap.
Really?
Like, oh, you can get, if you wanted to, you could get the best accommodations, the best food, all that for the same price of doing what you would normally do in another country.
Yeah.
And that's the same with a lot of Eastern Europe. Another one that I didn't go to was Albania. And personally, like, I don't really know much about the country.
Yeah.
But most people have seen Taken in America, and it's like all about Albania. So I just had this thought like, oh, it seems unsafe. You know, I'm probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
Not high on my list. But had a ton of people I met that went, and they say it looks like Greece. It looks like the Greek islands because it's all coastline pretty much.
Yeah, they're Balkans.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the ones I was sad I missed for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to do this kind of trip again, and I'm definitely going to catch it that time.
Yeah.
I'd say one thing, I did do Sweden and Denmark in regards to like the Nordic area.
Yeah.
But I wish I did more of like the countryside, or like went to see the Northern Lights, or went hiking there, or went hiking in Switzerland, you know?
Yeah.
Because when you do the big cities, unless you plan a day trip, it's very hard to get out of the cities.
Yeah.
You got to really plan out, or like do a tour, or know you're going to wake up at 7 and take this bus to blah, 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 you know?
Can you see the Nordic lights during the summer?
I believe you can, but
Okay.
you have to go like pretty far north in either Norway or Sweden.
Oh, wow.
Like very far north. It's almost like a plane ride from Stockholm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know one spot that I've been it's been on my bucket list for a while? Budapest.
Oh, dude.
You went?
Don't even get me started on that place. In the eastern part of Europe,
Yeah.
that is hands down the best party city. Like it is insane.
Really?
Like that's where Europeans go to party
Really?
during the summer. Oh yeah. Like,
Budapest.
Everybody goes to Budapest. And it was awesome for me because I went the week before Ziget, which is their big music festival.
Wow.
It's 6 days long. It had like Dua Lipa, Justin Bieber, Tame Impala, Calvin Harris, like everybody on the top charts you ever heard of.
Yeah, yeah.
It's huge. So that kind of helped the nightlife as well, but it's just crazy fun city. I thought the local people were nice and the food was good. And one of the really cool things that me and some friends did there was they have like these thermal baths,
Oh,
like Turkish
yeah.
baths, you know? And it was so cool. Like just going there, it was a new experience, you know, just something cool to experience.
Yeah.
And it's a gorgeous city. Like we did a booze cruise around the river that goes like right through the middle of the city, and you kind of see all the monuments and the architecture.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous, man. But great city. That and Prague are, wow. Definitely do both of those again.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any other? I know you mentioned you have the kind of the travel bug now. Are there spots that like maybe outside of Europe that you're interested in going next, or is Europe your next trip again?
This summer it'll be like a short trip.
Okay.
But I'm doing a few places in Europe this summer. But other than Europe, I really want to go to Australia and Southeast Asia. Just because I met a ton of Aussies and I loved them.
Yeah.
They were some of my favorite people.
Okay.
But also, I like to surf, so I would want to do like a little surfing trip in Australia. But then like places like Thailand and Vietnam and Bali and Laos, and I just want to go see that because, again, like when you're traveling, there's people that travel way more than you do,
Yeah.
and who just like budget their lives and always travel. And that's one of the places of the world that everybody's like, you have to go, you have to go. And another thing, you can do backpacking in Europe pretty cheap, but it can also get pretty expensive if you don't like really budget yourself.
Yeah.
But places like Southeast Asia and South America, a fraction of the cost. Like I'd say on average in Europe, if you get a good hostel, which I always recommend, like get the best one you can find that's not out of your budget.
Yeah.
You're going to be spending $25 to $50 a night.
Okay.
And then like the super expensive places might be like 70 max. But
Mm.
that'll only be in like London and Amsterdam.
Okay.
But places in another thing, you'll definitely have to at least book like 5 days in advance for hostels in Europe.
Really?
Maybe 2, depending on the city. Like if you want to get a good one, like book in advance.
Okay.
You don't have to book months in advance, but book in advance.
Got you.
But then I've heard stories of like people being in Thailand, show up at a great hostel and they're like, yeah, come on in. It's €2 and like would be the equivalent of €2 or US dollar a night.
Wow.
But in their currency, it'd be like a significant amount.
Yeah.
So it's just way cheaper on food and that kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny when I was working on ships, on cargo ships. I would be talking to a lot of the sailors and asking them, hey, like, where's your favorite spots? Like things like that. Because obviously they've been so many places, and even on their time off, they're traveling.
Yeah.
But a large percentage of them would always say Southeast Asia.
Yeah, I bet.
Philippines, Vietnam, or a lot of them also said their favorite city in the world was Singapore.
I've heard great things about it.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go, but I don't really know much about it, you know?
Yeah.
I've just heard people say, oh, you have to go. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
You know?
They would be saying that it's a beautiful city, highly efficient, super clean. They were talking about like if you're walking smoking cigarettes or chewing gum, like you don't throw it on the ground. Like that'll get you arrested.
Yeah.
And like just like the differences in that is like, but even that like that keeps the city clean. Like it's interesting what they would be talking about. What how was the situation with paying for things and money in Europe? Do you have to like pull cash out? Like how were you doing that?
I did. So most countries do the euro, right?
Yeah.
But I'd say, you know, obviously don't carry this around in hand.
Yeah,
because
of
it's
course.
not smart. But like, you should at least have like 200 in the local currency, US dollars in the local currency.
Yeah.
Just in case, you know, because you're going to lose things. You're going to get in situations, like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like personally, I lost a credit card while I was over there, and I still had my debit, so it wasn't like that big of a deal. But if I lost both, like that cash would have really come in handy for the next couple of days before I could get a replacement.
Yeah.
That kind of deal. But you don't need to use cash, like, because a lot of places in Europe prefer card. Like Sweden, nobody uses cash in Sweden. It's almost a cashless society.
Really?
Yeah, they prefer you to use card. They want you to use card. But then you go to Greece and like they want cash. Croatia, they want cash. It just really depends on where you're at. But pretty much everywhere takes Apple Pay or like a tap card or a regular credit card or whatever it is. So nothing like really weird you need to do for that. But one thing people don't think about is your phone plan. So you can do like one of a few things. Personally, I spent the money and got like a unlimited, not an unlimited plan, but like a plan that works in each country I was going to. And you spend a flat fee per month and you get coverage everywhere. Obviously don't have the unlimited like service and all that stuff, but
yeah.
you can do that. Or each country you go to, you get a SIM card in that country.
Yeah.
So you just keep replacing SIM cards. And I know some people that literally just did Wi-Fi. But also, I don't recommend that because if you get in a bad situation and your phone doesn't work, like, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Like, you can't call the police. You can't do whatever, you know, get transportation, that kind of thing.
So most of these places, what were you doing during the day when?
It really depends on the city.
Okay.
So, like, big cities like Barcelona, well, Barcelona's its own thing, but Amsterdam and London and Florence and places like that, go to the museums. Like, I personally love art, I don't know much about it, but I just love going and looking at it.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to do. Go on Google and like look up kind of like the hot spots. Like DC, we have Adams Morgan and DuPont and City Center. Like look up those spots.
Yeah.
And just go walk around. Like sometimes I would literally have no plan and just walk around. Like I walked around Madrid for like a few hours, and then I kind of got the base of things. But then you go to Croatia and Greece and some parts of Italy, you'll just go spend the day on the beach. Or you'll go do a hike that day, or like rent. One thing in Greece we did a lot was rent ATVs.
Mm-hmm.
And we would just, because everybody has ATVs there, we would just roll around the island all day, like look at stuff, you know, and come back before the night. But it's really like you can do anything, because every city is going to have a ton of tourist attractions.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times it'll be like a church or a chapel. And we obviously have religion here in America and churches and synagogues and all that stuff. But the architecture in Europe is insane compared to America.
Really?
Like if you think DC is like pretty architecture, like that gets blown out of the water in almost every city. Because you'll have buildings and areas of a city or churches or whatever it may be that were from like 1800s, 1600s, 1500, 1200.
Yeah.
Like there's a bridge in Prague that still stands. They've obviously done renovations, but they haven't like reconstructed or anything. And I think it's like the Prague Bridge that was built in 1200. And you're just walking across it thinking, this was literally built 800 years ago, you know? Like you would never see that in America.
Yeah. Why do you think that our architecture is so different? Like we don't, like they used to spend literally like 100 years, 200 years building a church or a building. It's like that's not even close to like within of what we think of doing here.
No.
Like we think something, we're like, let's get it done as soon as possible. Why is this taking too long? Like
I think one thing which I think is definitely a cultural thing, is like the kind of modernism point of view in architecture, or you like the old Gothic stuff and that kind of thing. And I think in America, we definitely had like beautiful buildings in our old architecture, like all the way through like 1800s, early 1900s. But as architecture and engineering started to get better, started building skyscrapers and more like that kind of aesthetic and look. And I think we just went that way.
Yeah.
You know, personally. So when you go around America, that's what you see.
Facts.
You know, you're not really seeing like specific niche architecture to a state other than like the Southwest, like New Mexico and Arizona, or like California, that kind of thing. And then New York has its own thing and stuff like that. But I don't know, we're just definitely more modern look in America in regards to architecture.
Yeah. So you mentioned materialism a little?
Like more like modernism view versus like old world. Like I like the old world Gothic aesthetic kind of deal.
Got you. So then I guess completely different question, but who do you think has a more materialistic culture?
Oh, it really depends on the country. Because America along like the spectrum is pretty materialistic.
Yeah.
And like you would know that if you just lived here.
For sure.
You know? It's just part of our culture. But I think like England blows us out of the water.
Really?
Yeah. Like, you know, it's not, I don't know. If you work like a normal job here, like you might splurge on a few nice like shirts and jackets or whatever it may be. It obviously depends on the person, or get a nice car or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But like when I would travel and I would see a lot of people from England, they'd have on like all this designer clothing or like a bag, and you're like, you know, what are you doing? And they'll just be working a normal job. But in their culture, I think they're inclined to spend more on how you look. And we do a lot, don't get me wrong, but they're way more interested in the brand name, I think.
Yeah.
But then you go to places like Greece and Spain and some of the Nordic countries, and they have their own style that they wear, you know, and that's how they look, and they could give a crap what's on the label, you know?
Yeah.
And another thing I noticed that was kind of along the same lines, is Americans love to talk about money and work and jobs and that kind of deal, you know?
Yeah.
But like that's like you don't talk about that in a
Over
lot of
there.
countries in Europe.
Yeah.
It's like frowned upon.
Huh.
You know, like you know that like old cliche like some you're having an argument with somebody, you'd be like, "Oh, I make more than you," or "Your job shit," or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like that will not fly in Europe. Cuz their culture is work to play, you know. They just work whatever they can so they can enjoy their lives. You know, like in Spain, they have siesta during the day and they'll go work for like 3 or 4 hours, have a break for 2 hours, come back, work for 3 or 4 hours, then be done for the day and go out all night, you know? But what they say about Americans is work to live,
Yeah.
you know? Or I can't remember the
live to work.
Live to work, yeah. While they're work to play.
Yeah. Has that whole experience, has that affected your view on maybe materialism or your priorities?
I'd say like just in my frame of mind, like shifted wise, because you grow up in America, if you do or don't go to college, it's all about like, oh, you got to make money so you can move out and pay rent and buy a house eventually and all that stuff, and that's like the focus. But a lot of places in Europe, the focus is what are we doing tonight with my friends, and what are we eating tonight, or whatever it may be. And personally, I think you have to strike a balance, because I'll personally like I want to make good money. I want to be able to like have the freedom to own my own business and do things on my own. But at the same time, what's life if you're not enjoying it, you know?
Definitely.
And I think they have the enjoying aspect of it down, like down pat. But also like pretty like it's a different work culture, man. Like it's not taken as seriously.
Yeah.
You know, like your career in America, like you take it seriously if you want to move up in a company or whatever it may be. But it's just lax more so in Europe, from what I gathered.
Yeah. And I'd say that might be universally a thing amongst other cultures versus America, because I see a lot of Hispanic cultures and island culture and different places. They're really focusing on enjoying their lives and experiencing, and they're really not caring about money, career, this, that. They're literally thinking, what can we do to have fun? How could, like, friends, food, what are we drinking?
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's that constant frame of mind, which in the other aspect has maybe allowed Americans to progress in a lot of aspects more, but at the cost of what?
Well, you're losing your freedom, and and just having fun in general, you know?
Yeah.
Like we Americans, we party on Fridays and Saturdays. And if like personally, like I love to go out drinking with friends. Like I might do like Thursday or a Sunday or Wednesday, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in Europe, it's like every night. And everywhere stays open till like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And people will party all night and get up at 9 a.m. for their day job and go work, you know? And like some cities, like the night is Tuesday or it's Wednesday or whatever it may be. And you don't really find that as much in America. You know, usually people go real hard on Friday and Saturday and they're kind of done for the week. But also, like, my friend, the Swedish friend, made a good point. Yeah, like, we know how to enjoy ourselves, but most Europeans are never going to get to that level of, oh, I can buy what I want, I can do what I want, you know, I've got money in my pocket. You know, and I feel like that's a way more attainable goal in America, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
You know, but there's obviously a balance somewhere in there. Can't be too much one or the other for me personally.
Yeah. What spot do you think was the easiest to meet locals? Because I know you mentioned you met a lot of different people from Europe and from around the world at these hostels and just moving around. But like actual locals, what country or city you think was the easiest to like?
I'd say the friendliest were the Dutch and the Czech Republic.
Interesting.
Yeah, those were definitely the friendliest. 'Cause you know, certain like like spots in Spain, like Barcelona, the locals are very nice,
Okay.
you know. But then you went down to Malaga, and I loved Malaga. I had a great time. But some locals were kind of like, I don't really want to mingle with like an American or mingle with a British person or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was interesting is one of the most interesting cultures to me was Sweden. So they're very like keep to themselves, no real small talk. But like if you just go up to them and talk to them for a little bit, get them comfortable, then they'll be the nicest people ever. But they have that kind of, I don't really want to talk to anybody, kind of stay away from me kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But if you crack the shell, then they're great people. And that's how some of Europe is too, you know?
Yeah.
Well,
So a lot of people that I've known have gone to Europe. Let's say they'll go for a week, right?
mm-hmm.
And they'll do 7 cities in 7 days, or 5 cities in 7 days, whatever. And they're pretty much, you don't really get to like dive into it.
No.
How much time were you spending in each of these places?
I'd say 3 to 5 days on average.
Okay.
Most cities, 3 days, and you can really get a taste of it.
Yeah.
Anything less, it's just hard to. You got to think about it. Like, if you do like I did every 3 to 5 days, you're picking up all your stuff, packing it all in a big backpack or a suitcase, and you're getting on a plane, a train, a bus. You're traveling for hours. You get to that spot, you're unpacking everything, getting all your stuff situated. Like, it's a lot, you know?
Yeah.
So you got to take that into account when you're traveling. And unless it's like super small city, you're not going to be able to see everything in one day and really like get what you want out of it.
Yeah.
But also some cities you don't need the 3 to 5 days, you know, like 3 is plenty enough. Then you go to places like Amsterdam and London and Barcelona. Dude, I could spend a month there,
Yeah.
you know, and not run out of things to do and like new things to experience. It really depends on the city. But I'd say a general rule of thumb is like island style places or beach places and big cities, spend longer there. Just because big cities have tons of stuff to do. And 2, anything with a beach, you're going to want to do at least 1 or 2 beach days.
Yeah.
But on those beach days, you're not going to do any of the other tourist stuff. So then on the days you don't go to the beach, then you go to the museums or you go on the hike or you go do a tour or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've heard a lot of people when they're talking about like traveling, like they'll say you don't really get to know yourself until you take a solo trip. And like you get to be alone with your own thoughts and experience something solo. How do you think that mentally, how do you think that changed you?
I think obviously some people are more independent than others, you know? Like I know some friends who always need to be with friends, and then other people who, I'm fine with chilling by myself. But you don't really get that sense of like, holy crap, I'm alone, until you get off the plane. You're in a country where you know nobody. You don't know anybody that's coming to see you, you know, and you got to make your own way. I'd say in that sense, like having the confidence in yourself to go out and do things and talk to people and that kind of thing, unparalleled. Like I've always been pretty confident in myself, but like this trip like solidified. Oh, I can go up and talk to anybody I want, you know, like I'm comfortable with going out to eat alone or going and traveling alone. Like I'm completely comfortable with it now. When before I would have been like, you know, I'd much rather do this with a friend or much rather go with a group, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd say, you know, obviously it definitely depends on like how you grew up and whatever, but responsibility wise, even if you grew up and you're very responsible at the age of 18 or 21, you are constantly, when you're traveling like that, you're constantly on the move and you're constantly thinking about, oh, I have to do this today and this today and this today, or I have to do laundry, or did I keep my stuff locked up? That kind of thing, you know, just the responsibility aspect of it. Oh, I have to make this flight today, or, oh, I can't, you know, I paid for this tour ticket and this is going to cost me $30 out of my pocket if I don't go and do it. Get up and go do it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Interesting.
So definitely responsibility wise and self-confidence and just really like figuring out who you are. Because I think one thing that, especially people who go to college, like you'll have 3 roommates or 2 roommates or whatever. You're always having to compromise in some way on what you want to do, unless you're like completely independent and like, screw it, I'm doing this today, you know?
Yeah.
But that's the thing about like traveling like that, wherever you go, if you're solo, like you're picking your agenda. You might meet people that you really like and want to hang out with them, but at the end of the day, I want to go do this today. I'll see you guys tonight, you know? And that's one thing, like you just figure out what you like, you know? 'Cause I went over there, like I personally love music. And I went over there and I love classic rock, rap, country. Like I'm pretty like across the spectrum.
Yeah.
But people in Europe like love EDM and house and techno. And that's one thing I really got into that I didn't think I would love, you know?
Yeah.
And now like I'll go to shows all the time and go to raves and stuff because I figured out I loved it, you know? It's just fun to me. But I think that's one thing, like you'll really figure out what you like to do. And what you prioritize when you're in a vacation kind of mindset and like travel mindset.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from all the young people that you met, what would you say is the biggest difference between like American young people and European young people culturally and just where we're at in life?
We kind of already talked about this, but the whole, graduate high school, get a job, or go to college, and then get a job and have a certain life path. I think it's way more loose in Europe.
Yeah.
Like, personally, they're not so planned out, like, I want to be in this career and do this field, you know. Obviously, there are people that are, but it's way looser in regards to that. Also, like, just simply picking where to eat. Like, I think Europeans there's definitely a lot of Americans who do too. Like, personally, me, I do, but they value freshness and local and like non-GMO very highly. Like, there's way less additives in European food. And one thing you'll notice is you live in America, so you won't notice unless you leave. But if you spend an extended time in another place in the world, you'll notice like you'll just start to feel better, like body wise, because you're eating healthy and fresh food. And you could be eating like steak and mashed potatoes every day or whatever it is, but just the way it's processed and made here is a lot different.
Yeah.
Because it's not all farm to table, but it's all like a lot of places are just locally grown food, you know? And they definitely prioritize that way more than we do.
Yeah.
But it's just subtleties and small things like that. Because Europe itself, so different country to country. You drive 4 hours and it's a different world.
Yeah.
You know? Unlike America, where it changes state by state, but it's still got a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
So some cultures, like the Dutch, are very outgoing and they'll come up and talk to you and like all this stuff. But then people from Finland and Sweden, like you kind of have to crack their shell first and really get talking to them for them to be comfortable with you. So it's really country to country, you know, differences and culturally.
Yeah. So I know you like to work out a lot. Were you able to get in the gym over there?
That's tough, man.
Okay.
It's very tough. I'd say like I started out strong. Like every day I would either, for the first like 2 weeks, I would either go for a run or, you know, do some abs in my hostel or like find like a park where you could do pull-ups and stuff. But like eventually you're kind of just get to the point where you're going so far out of your way to do this when, one, you're already walking all day.
Correct.
You're getting way more steps in than you usually would. You're always doing things. And two, you're going to eat less because you're always doing things.
Yeah.
So I definitely noticed like physique wise, like I definitely lost muscle mass, but I didn't lose or gain any weight. I stayed pretty much on the same number. But also that varies on your metabolism and like your eating habits and stuff. But it's very hard to get in gyms in Europe unless you're very disciplined or you have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because you're going to, you know how it goes. If you come to a gym in America that you're not a member at, you're going to have to pay a day fee, whether it be 10 or $20. And that racks up
Yeah.
You know, if you do it like 3 or 4 days a week, it's a lot.
Facts. So I know you mentioned liking EDM and house music now more.
Yeah.
Was that because of the European trip or?
No, I mean, I definitely, like, over college, I started to get more and more into it. And, like, started to go to Echo Stage in DC and, like, see some of these live DJs.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it was super fun. But, like, something just, like, clicked in my brain after, like, going to Ibiza.
Yeah.
And which is, like, all pretty much house music. But I just found out I loved it. And it was just, like, and I started listening to it all the time in my headphones. I was like, oh, I just really enjoy it. So I'd say half and half, you know, like personally me on my own, but also being in that environment where most nights you go out, that's what you're going to hear.
Yeah.
Unless you go to an American bar.
Mm.
And there are American bars everywhere, like everywhere. And they'll play the same stuff we do at our clubs here, you know, or it'll be like a dive bar that plays country or a rock bar or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But they're definitely way more into that than we are.
So I know you've mentioned a lot of these spots are like heavy on that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some spots in Germany, Ibiza. Yeah. And would you say that you need to have or that you need to like that type of music to be going to these spots, like to enjoy it?
I don't think so personally, because you're going out, you're gonna be like drunk or tipsy or like vibing out with your friends and having a great time. You know what I mean? The music's not as big a factor. I think the best thing about it is that it's really hype and like it's just always on beat. Like it's dancing music, it's upbeat, having fun, you know. Some music is too slow for me personally, like when I'm going out, like it's just too slow to dance to or like get hype with your boys or whatever. And I don't think you need to personally like it. Like, I didn't really like techno at all, but then I went to Berlin and had a phenomenal 5 days clubbing the entire time.
Yeah.
You know? And I like it a little bit now, but it's not like it's my jam, you know? But I feel like when you're in that environment, it's just fun to go out and go to clubs like that.
Experience.
Like, Ibiza is just, it's unreal, man.
What about it? Because I've heard this before. But what's the biggest thing that like makes it that crazy to you?
So it's literally a tiny island.
Okay.
And there's like 4 like proper like little towns in the island. And there's probably like 20 major clubs there. Mm-hmm. But one thing is every club has DJ residencies every week. So like one club had David Guetta play twice a week at that club.
Okay.
So every time you go out, you're seeing the best of the best live performances. 2, when you go there, it's like getting off the plane in Vegas or like Miami. Everybody's going there for the same reason. They're going there to party and have fun. You know, it's just that vibe and the energy that everybody brings. And the absolute like enormity of these clubs and the production and just all around. Like my favorite one there was called High Ibiza.
Yeah.
It has like a main room that fits like 5,000 people. And it's got like a club room that'll fit like 500. And then it has a DJ in the bathrooms that'll fit like 100 people in the bathrooms. And everybody will be wilding out. But one thing that Ibiza does specifically great, but Europe in general, is they have chill areas with couches and like outdoor areas where you can just chill and sit down for a little bit. Because you know, when you go out, like if you go out for like 6 hours, man, like at a club, like it gets a little tiring, you know? You're standing up the whole time, chatting, all this stuff.
Yeah.
It was kind of nice to go outside and like
have a cigarette.
Yeah, do something, you know, just chill and do something else. But that place is just unreal, man. And there's people from everywhere. Everywhere. And I thought that was one of the coolest things about it, you know.
Out of all the travelers that you saw, would you say a majority of them or a large percentage were from a specific place?
Not one in particular, but I'd say like top 3.
Yeah.
Definitely combination of Australians and Dutch people.
Really?
Australians as a whole travel the most because they're in their own little corner
Yeah.
and they never really get to go anywhere. So when they go, they travel, you know. You'll meet a ton of Aussies in Europe. Dutch people travel all the time because they're right in Europe and it's easy for them. It's less Americans than you think it's going to be too.
Really?
Yeah. The American hotspots are Spain, Italy, the UK, you know, Amsterdam, that kind of stuff. But like everywhere else, like there was sometimes I didn't meet an American the entire stay I was in a city. Maybe one.
Wow.
And I just expected everywhere that, oh, there'd be Americans everywhere,
Yeah.
you know? But then in Barcelona, like we had a group of like 20, 30 people that all went out together and did activities for the week. And there was like 10 Americans, you know? It just really depends on where you go.
Mm.
But one thing I found interesting was certain countries in Europe have certain spots they vacation.
Really? Like what?
Like the Irish love going to specific Greek islands, which one of them I went to, which is Eos. They love it. And then you have like the Italians love to go to Ibiza because they have their own beach towns like that. And then you'll have the British love to go to Spain and Greece. Just different things like that, you know. And like Germany loves to go to Croatia. They just have their, you know, like living here, you would go to Florida or you would go to the Outer Banks or Atlanta or what, you know, New York. So we have our spots, you know.
Definitely.
They have their own, but it's all in different countries because it's so close to each other.
Was there, from what I've seen, there's a big difference, but what was your perspective on the difference of fashion between America and Europe?
Big difference, but depends on the country for
Okay.
sure. I'd say like regionally, like Spain and Italy are pretty similar, you know, stuff like that. And then you have like Ireland and Scotland and England that are pretty similar in fashion. But Americans, one thing you really notice is that, like, let's say you're out the door, you got a day off, and you just need to go to the grocery store. You might throw on a pair of sweats and a sweatshirt, you know what I mean? But Europeans, like, that isn't in their wardrobe. You're not going to see people rolling around in sweats, like, ever. They're at least throwing on jeans and some Vans maybe and a shirt.
Yeah.
Or, like, nice shorts or whatever. They just don't have that, like, laid-back style culture that we have. And, like, obviously, like, certain countries, like, a lot of Eastern European countries, like, the male clothes are tight. Like, it's stuff that I wouldn't wear personally, but they like the super skinny jeans or the jean shorts and like tight striped shirts or polos. It's like Americans just wouldn't wear that, you know? But like the Italians dress great. The Greeks way different, but dress great. It's more like laid back, like linen, beach style, that kind of stuff. Spanish have their own little style that dress great. Then there are some countries that's like, oh, America blows you out of the water on that one.
Okay.
You know? Just really depends, man.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that being said, I think we're going to wrap this up. And but it was great to have you. And
sure,
we'll definitely have you on again.
Yeah, man. It's great to have.
All right, man.